let's face it, we're talking about tax, or more specifically, how money launderers wish to evade it. I want to turn one fiscal statement from Jean-Claude Juncker, which stood out in the reflection paper on EU finances published a few days ago. It was given the reverence of a guiding principle, and it states, quote, "We need a budget to achieve our aims. The budget for us is therefore not an accounting tool, but a means to achieve our political goals," unquote. It reminds me that the EU isn't interested in value for money. Politics before economics, that's your mantra. Little wonder that the EU can and does only grow like a Ponzi scheme. It expands rather than competes. It's why the deal with the Ukraine went ahead despite the Dutch referendum rejecting it. It's why mass immigration is allowed to continue. It's why 80 billion of government debt is purchased by the ECB every month. It's why non-EU companies are fined unprecedented amounts for breaches of competition law. It's why Greece is squeezed so hard that if it was a lemon, you could hear the pip squeak. And it's why the EU wants country-by-country tax reporting, a database it will no doubt repurpose to challenge the existing tax residency of non-EU companies. In this way, we have expansion of territory, of population, of money, of debt, and of extraterritorial tax, but expansion of a tax bubble is unsupported by any wealth creation. In all this, the EU is the true heir of Napoleon's Grande Armée, feeding on the past wealth of its conquered territories, and if you continue in this way, it will end its days in the same diminished fashion, with a thin red line struck through its accounts. I'm coming to that, madam. I ask you to view Brexit as an opportunity to avoid that fate and to instead embrace competition. After all, if Napoleon had not sought to exclude the UK from trading in Europe, he would have had no need to invade Russia. So before you return to the Commission, whose clocks I understand are correct twice a day at 1812, you are able to agree with me some guiding principles so that we know what should not be accounted as a suspect crime for AMLD purposes, namely that, 1, tax avoidance is legal. It is in fact the fiduciary duty of all directors in common law countries, and for a very good reason, because it is the necessary evil by which states are forced to keep their taxes competitive. And 2, without tax competition, public services become inefficient, ultimately making the economies they serve inefficient also.
Thank you. Madam Commissioner, would you like to react?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Coburn. I took the note of what you said. I only want to respond on one thing, that the EU does not recognise the value for money principle. I would like to oppose to it by several examples, not only the enhanced fight against money laundering and tax evasion and tax fraud. We have adopted in, I think, last year 12 legislative initiatives, and we are pushing on a swift implementation of this legislation. And of course, it's not up to the Commission. It will be up to the Member States to enforce properly this EU legislation which has been adopted. Let me just add three more things, or two more things. We are reorganising in the EU the fight against crime, so that we have specialised bodies and measures against financial criminality and corruption and fraud, and the bodies which will have the hands free for combating against violent kind of crime. And on this financial side, there is a very clear picture of the current EU, which wants to have the money for meaningful, sensible policies, and not to let the money to hide in the pockets of the thieves and corrupted people. I want to mention the European Prosecutor's Office, which should bring a new quality in prosecution and investigation of cross-border value-added tax, big fraud. Nobody before has done such a thing. This is the first ever systemic step forward by the European Commission against this enormously high crime and fraud in the EU. And I could continue by setting very strict criteria under the cohesion and agriculture policy, all those audit and control mechanisms which disable the people to abuse the money. I could continue, so I must reject the declaration that the EU does not recognise the principle of value for money. Thank you.
Tax avoidance is legal.
Now is the time.
It is legal.
Now, sorry, no dialogue. You had your chance. It's now the turn of our colleague, Ms. Kappel from ENF.